G'day Internet, Max right here, and we have one of our favorite guests to have on the channel here, Juan Villaverde. Juan, how are you?
Max, my friend, how's it going, sir?
I'm having a great time. We've been having a great chat for an hour. We should hit record early, talking about all the
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
world's woes. But okay, let's get into the crypto markets and tell me, what do you see in the tea leaves?
What am I seeing on the tea leaf? So I was among the many things we were discussing. I have this new model. It's not actually new. I've had it since last year, but I wasn't really sharing it publicly. I shared it a few times with you, Max, but I wasn't really ready to make announcements based on that model. But so far this year, we're basically in September by now, and it's been pretty accurate. So it was accurate in calling for a major top in early March. We all know Bitcoin so far has topped out in March. The all-time high was March 13, I think. And that same model has been calling basically every turn in this correction because it's been like I don't know what the technical term is because I don't use these terms as a cycle analyst, but I think it's a descending wedge. It's not a wedge. It's whatever, a bull flag. You know, when it's
Bull flag,
making
bull flag,
these
bull flag.
prominent cycles, you can see the highs and lows in these cycles, but it's going down, but not by much.
Yes.
That's what Bitcoin has been doing. Okay, so in that, we have seen several highs and lows during that correction. It has basically nailed almost everyone. It kind of missed the one in July when you and I spoke last. I said I think there's a turning point right now. I think we chatted. I think it was July 3rd. The low I think was July 5th, the day after Independence Day. That showed up in the model, but it's a cycle inversion. I don't want to elaborate. I would say that's the only time this year that I didn't really see the turning point on my forecasting. Okay, why am I saying all that? Because it has been saying, again, since the start of the year, that August is when we're going to see the end of this correction. I ignored it at first because I called for the low in July. Let me elaborate on that. The reason for that is it's a 16-month cycle. What we're seeing now play out, it's a 16-month cycle correction. It's kind of a new cycle in crypto, which I think we should discuss that at some point. It's not a cycle that was prominent before. It's not a cycle that I paid much attention to. You would see it every now and then, especially during bear markets, but it didn't really show up during bull markets. You were free to ignore it. I don't think that's the case anymore. You cannot ignore this 16-month wave. And the problem with that is, even in a bull market, you're stuck with a correction that lasts anywhere between 4 and 6 months. When this 16-month wave hits, I did forecast that 16-month wave to top out in March and end around early August. I give it a margin of error of about a month. It's a 16-month cycle afterwards. So about 30 days is a margin of error that you would expect. So I thought if I get a low in early July, that's probably good enough as the end of this correction. But obviously, if I get a low in August, that's even more likely to be the 16-month low. And what do you know? I actually forecasted the subcomponents of that 16-month cycle. And long story short, August 6th and August 8th was the most likely end of that 16-month correction. And I thought I was going to be wrong because, early July is the failed assassination attempt on President Trump. The market rallied on that because it boosts his chance of winning. So the market rallies on that. Then he gave the speech late July at the Bitcoin conference, and it was testing 70K basically. And I thought, okay, I have a forecast for a 16-month low on August 6th, and Bitcoin is testing 70K, and Trump is giving a speech. I thought, there's no way this forecast is correct. There's no way Bitcoin can make a new low by August 6th. But it did. Carry trade unwind. People were calling for a recession and the Fed to do an emergency cut, whatever. It was one of the biggest crashes. Actually, it was the biggest crash this year. It took place on that first week of August, just like my model was saying all along. So now I think I should share the results of that model with the world because it has been right and it has been more right than me. So even though I created it, it's saying things that I sometimes don't believe to be true. So what it's saying now is first week of August was most likely the end of this correction that started in March.
Hang on a second.
But there's yeah.
The first. So okay, looking backwards 30 days. The first week
Yeah.
of August was what was that?
First week of August is when Bitcoin tested 50K. On
Yep.
August 5th, it crashed, it tested 50K, it rallied, it closed at 54K. That was in line with the forecast, which was August 6th. So the day before, we saw this big crash. And now what the model is saying is that we may see a secondary low between August 26th and August 28th. Is August 28th right now? There's a margin of error there. Suffice to say, within the next week or so, we may see Bitcoin retest 54K, even drop below it. But I would say if you're not seeing that by the first week of September, then you can rule that out, because we have seen a bit of a correction now on August 26th. We did see it. And that's the type of move that I'm trying to forecast. It's a very short-term price movement. But to prove it wrong, I'm just going to use that 50K test on August 5th. That's a 16-month low. However, the problem with the 16-month cycle is that even when it ends, the market doesn't really turn around and rally quickly. Like, it takes time. Last time we had a similar cycle low. It was last year. It wasn't really the same cycle. This one's longer, but just to give you an idea, Bitcoin made a low on September 11th. It wasn't until I think it was mid to late October that Bitcoin actually broke out and the market actually became bullish. Between September 11th and I would say late October, the market was kind of lukewarm at best, even though it had bottomed out, even though it had made a low in that correction that started in July. Actually, it started in April of 2023. Even so, even though the cycle had ended, the correction had ended, the market wasn't rallying, it wasn't doing anything. And I kind of see the same thing this time around, which, yes, if you recall last time we spoke, that's what I said. I said, yeah, it's going to bottom out now, but I don't think it's going to break out anytime soon. I continue to see the same thing, even though it made this crash low in August. I don't see the market in a hurry to go anywhere, to be honest. And I worry that the same forecasting model shows a very prominent low right before the election on November 5th. That leads me to think, I could be totally off here, but it leads me to think that we may see Bitcoin just tread water until it makes another prominent low on the first week of November, and it shoots up from there. That would be the breakout. Now, it wouldn't be a new low. Bitcoin would not pass 50K by November. Maybe it goes to like 55. I don't know what it's going to be far ahead in the future. But what I'm trying to say is we may be range bound here between now and November, even though the low is in. That doesn't mean that the market is going to rally. That's really what I'm seeing now. And yeah, this correction, another thing I'll say is, caught me by surprise how long it is. That's because it's never happened before. And I think that needs to be mentioned. I think a lot of people are saying, hey, they're dismissing this very long correction, even though it feels like it doesn't feel good to go through a 6-month and sit through a 6-month correction. It never feels good. But you have to ask yourself, is this normal, or is this just, is this crypto being crypto, or is this something I should pay attention to? And as a cycle analyst, I count time. And I'm telling you that 2024 should have been more bullish. Absolutely. This is the worst first year of a bull market in Bitcoin trading history. That should be taken into account. I'm not saying the bull market is over. I think we have one leg higher to go. I don't think we're done. Also, if you look at the actual price correction, is not much. The top is like 74. We're trading at 62.60, I think. So it's not nothing serious in terms of price, but in terms of time, it is pretty serious. And it hasn't happened before. It hasn't. Last time this happened, a correction like this took place, it was 2021, but we got a double top. It wasn't the end. Bitcoin topped out in April 21. That wasn't the end of the bull market. It was close to the end, though. Pretty big correction, pretty big rally into a new all-time high, a failed rally, and then bear market. So I'm not saying the same thing plays out this time around. I still see the top sometime next year. But where I was thinking maybe November 25 is the top, I'm thinking it's probably going to be a Q1, Q2 affair. And the reason for that is, fundamentally speaking, we're not seeing the money printing that led to previous explosive crypto bull market. Now, they're printing money. They always do. But not as much as before. So unless that changes, and maybe that is going to change. But if that doesn't change, you're going to continue to see this type of, let's call it anemic bull market. Yes, prices are going up, but no, it's not like before. Um, because something changed, I believe, when the Fed started hiking rates. I mean, the credibility is being thrown into question, and they're just not printing money. The Chinese are printing now a little bit. That led to Bitcoin's recovery following the August crash. The August crash, if you look at it from a macro landscape, it made the dollar a lot weaker in Asia. And that helped Asian economies print, especially the Chinese. The Chinese started printing immediately after the yen collapsed in early August. It gave them room to do that. They were looking to print, but they couldn't because they're going to devalue their currency. That gives inflation. That leads to revolution and people trying to overthrow the CCP. So the Chinese don't want to do that. They're only going to print if the yuan is strong. The yuan is strong now. They're printing. Bitcoin rallies. It makes perfect sense. But we need to see the Fed. Where's the Fed? They're nowhere to be found. They're saying, oh, they're gonna cut rates. Yes, they're gonna cut rates. Guess what? That doesn't make crypto rally. The thing that makes crypto rally, the rocket fuel for crypto, is money printing. Now, the Treasury is doing a lot of printing. Election is coming up. The Democrats want to be reelected. I mean, this is not a political statement. They do. And they control the Treasury. They're going to print. They're going to pump money. Also, we have a debt ceiling by January, I think. So historically, when that happens, when there's a debt ceiling deadline, the Treasury injects money into the economy to keep, so they don't want to put pressure on Congress to come to a deal. So I see liquidity increasing between now and the end of this year, which means crypto prices are going to rally. But how strongly? Well, it's not going to be COVID, because with COVID, they were throwing everything they had at it. They even said they were going to buy junk bonds. Now they're doing the sterilized QE and they're keeping rates high. And you can see it in the price action. It is weaker than in the past. And why is that? Because even though the liquidity cycle continues to go up, and even though global liquidity is at all-time highs, it's not growing as fast as people said it would. The people who forecast liquidity. I'm not one of those people because I don't have the models to do that. So I follow people who do. And I'm seeing liquidity tick higher. And every time it does, I'm seeing crypto rally just like it should. This is not 2020 anymore. That's basically the overview. I don't know if that made any sense at all. Any questions?
No, I completely agree. And I think you make a really, really good point that very few people understand. To distinguish between lower interest rates and money printing. It's all under the bucket of like easing and a loose Fed policy. However, they are very different animals. And I completely agree with you that a lowering of interest rates is not the same as money printing, especially when it comes to Bitcoin price action. Bitcoin price, what throws the markets into a tither is the debasement of the currency when they print. And that is what really boosts the Bitcoin price whenever that happens. So now we get into the forecasting game about, okay, when does that happen? How does that happen to the degree that happens? You mentioned the big COVID, like just an unprecedented amount of trillions of dollars just printed in a very, very short amount of time. I think we're approaching that day again sooner. Do I know what the actual catalyst is going to be? There are so many problems out there. They just revised, that they've been overstating jobs by 1 million jobs, over the last 3 months. They just came in and revised that. We said we made this many jobs. Actually, we made 1 million jobs less. Credit card debt soaring, savings rate declining. I'm seeing in several states, especially Florida, Texas over here, real estate market is in a shambles. Like prices are going down, inventory is skyrocketing. We're seeing forbearances, well, not forbearances, we're seeing foreclosures starting to skyrocket. There's a lot of things coming to a head. I think they're going to do whatever it takes to keep it all glued together until the election for the reasons that you stated. But I think they're not going to be able to do it much longer than that, if they can even do it that long. But they need an excuse. They can't just come in and just print $4 trillion.
Yeah.
There has to be an excuse.
Yeah.
So that excuse is a disaster one way or another. Could be a pandemic, could be a real estate market crash, could be a war, could be a lot of things, right? But they need that excuse. So I think, you're talking about, maybe we're not going to make another low, maybe we are. If there's another low to be made, it's on the back of that excuse. Whatever crashed the markets that gave them the excuse they need to print trillions, that's gonna affect Bitcoin. It always does. And so, there should be another punch to the guts of all the markets, real estate, stock market, all of it. It all should get a punch in the guts before they can do that printing. But then the moment that printing happens, it is off to the races hardcore.
Absolutely. Let me elaborate a little bit. I'm glad you touched on that because that's my view too. They need the excuse, otherwise they can't print. They always print with an excuse. The most amount of printing they did, I think, on a relative basis before COVID was 2008. Then every single time something happened with the world, they would print no inflation. So they need that cover. They need that excuse. I think we're going to see it because basically, you and I have spoken about this before. There's too much debt in the world. There's no way to repay it. So they have to print. Period. That's a long-term outlook. That's why I'll never sell my crypto. But I think this cycle, they can get away with very small amounts of money printing, which is leading to a very weak bull market. I think all that stuff you mentioned, that's on the other side of the next bear market in crypto. In other words, maybe the next time crypto goes down, it's a big crisis, recession, whatever we're going to call financial crisis. Then they print, and that leads to spectacular. But that's the next bull market. I'm talking this cycle. I think the next cycle is going to be explosive because structurally speaking, crypto is on an uptrend because the debt, because we're living in the midst of a debt bubble, a super massive debt bubble, which is swallowing the world. So long term, you're going to continue to have crypto bull markets. You're going to continue to see new all-time highs, but every cycle is different. And what I'm saying is that this cycle looks weak to me. It looked pretty strong at first, but it was mostly money printing that was done actually in the COVID years that they stuck. They just put that on the reverse repo facility. And as they drained that facility, basically the Fed printed money. I'm not going to go through the mechanics. They printed money. And then the ones who got that, the recipients of that, the financial institutions that got that money, parked it at the Fed. As that money left the Fed, we got a new crypto bull market. It was $2 trillion that were injected between, the end of 2022 and now. That facility has been drained. The Fed didn't do any new printing. They were just doing this. They sucked that liquidity out in 2021. What happened? Liquidity was drained in 21, and that led to an anemic, stunted 2021 top in crypto. They released those funds in 23 and 24 so far, and that led to a new crypto bull market. But where is the bazooka? Where's the bazooka? The types of printing that we would see in 2014, 2015, every time markets turned down, in came the central banks with hundreds of billions of dollars of liquidity. We're just not seeing that. It's just kind of like, I liken it to, they're just kind of trying to glide. They know the minute they stop printing, everything collapses and they have to come in with tens of trillions of dollars potentially. So instead of letting that happen, they try to manage. And they have been successful in managing this thing, letting it glide for a few years. And these things take years. So yeah, I think we're setting up for the next big crisis. I think it may be, second half of next year, probably 26. And on the back of that, a new round of money printing that leads to the type of crypto bull market that we're accustomed to. But in this cycle, unless something cracks fast, and I'll be the first to say, if we see cracks, serious cracks in the financial system, some people are saying they're coming before the end of the year. Okay, if we see that, I'm completely wrong. Throw away what I'm saying. Crypto's back on. It's even the altcoins are going to soar. I just don't see it though. And because I don't see that happening yet, I see it happening, but I think it's going to unfold over the next 24 months. And between now and then, we're going to have rising liquidity, higher Bitcoin prices, but nothing to write home about. That's basically the outlook.
So let me send it back to you in a slightly different way for the viewers at home. See, so Bitcoin has a 4-year cycle that we all know and love. And what you're saying is that the next liquidity cycle might not be timed with the Bitcoin cycle, with the Bitcoin bull market. And if it misses, if it doesn't come soon, the liquidity cycle will come in the bear market for the crypto cycle. And we're just not going to see the explosive growth this time around. But they all might line up very neatly in the next bull market. Is that said appropriately?
Basically, what I'm seeing is I think the Bitcoin cycle and the liquidity cycle, like, completely tied. You're looking at the same phenomenon. what I'm saying is, I think liquidity will grow into next year. It will lead to a new all-time high for Bitcoin, but it's not going to be like $500,000 per Bitcoin. It's going to be like 150, 200K at most. Then you have the bear market because liquidity contracts because you have a financial crisis. Then the new cycle, if you have a financial crisis, the amount of money printing that it's going to take us out of that crisis, I think is going to be in the tens of trillions because we're in those numbers already. The public debt in the U.S. is exploded beyond reason. Like its numbers are incomprehensible right now, even now, and it continues to grow. No one's doing anything about it. No matter who wins the White House, they both like to print, so they're going to continue to not print, but they like to spend money. Nobody's thinking about this issue, and so that's going to require a Fed that prints and accommodates. And China's imploding. These two are the countries that print the most money. China is completely cratering right now. I mean, their economy is on free fall. The reason they couldn't print is because the dollar was too strong, so they couldn't actually do much about it, and so they went free fall. Period. The Chinese leadership don't want to devalue their currency because that leads to problem. I mean, China has grappled with inflation in the past. I'm not a China history expert, but I've been told that they understand what inflation can do to leadership when it runs wild, and so they don't want to risk that. So the two main pushers of liquidity in the world, one of them, Fed, high rates, they're not doing anything. The Chinese, they're doing what they can, but they can't do much. Now that changes when the Fed cuts rates, but I don't think it changes if they cut rates from 5 to 3. They need to cut them to 0 again, and that gives everybody cover to print. Just not seeing it right now, not in the short term. And by that I mean over the next 12 months. Not really seeing it. I'm seeing liquidity injections here and there because they got to manage this controlled demolition thing that's going on right now. But I think at some point it runs away from them. We have a crash, and it's on the back end of that crash that maybe things, yeah, maybe crypto can spark a rally again. But it's not for this cycle. I'm starting to fear, maybe wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I fear it may not be for this cycle. I think for this cycle we have a few. The outlook is for more a bull market for sure, but less
Less
strong than
explosive.
the ones. Less explosive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. Comes down to a little bit of the timing. Comes down to a little bit. I mean, the recession is coming. I think that one's pretty clear. Like we've had the inverted yield curve
Yeah, I
for so
agree.
long.
Yeah.
The recession always comes after the Fed cuts rates. So
Yes.
that is likely to happen. Well, I think it's almost guaranteed to happen at this point in September. So the start of the rate cuts is going to happen this September. I expect that to officially be a recession, I don't know, could be as soon as this year, maybe early next year. But even if that is the case, it might not be, might not be told it's a recession until the data is revised, 12 months from now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I suspect we're less than a year away, but maybe a year is too late to catch this bull market and to really take off. Interesting stuff. Let's touch base in a month or two. We'll know more then. Any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say, even in spite of all of that, I'm not touching my crypto. I'm not selling anything. What I'm saying is, as an analyst, I think I'm preparing mentally for a less robust bull market than not me and most people were anticipating. But I'm not touching anything. And long term, the trend is up. And if Bitcoin is trapped in a range, if it crashed to like 30K, I'm not saying it will. Absolutely, don't think it'll happen. But I will be among the ones who are picking it up at a discount because long term the trend is intact. This thing will continue to march higher because there's too much debt in the world and they need to print. It's just that they've managed to get away with not printing so much for about 2 or 3 years. I think they can manage for another 12 months. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And just for what it's worth, I'm the same. I believe we're still in accumulation period. You should be still accumulating Bitcoin. I don't think I'll ever sell Bitcoin ever again. I think the tools are coming where we can just borrow against it. We'll never have to pay taxes on it. You just borrow against it, and you live off those borrowings, which is not a capital gains event. You have to pay taxes on it, and the value of crypto goes up so much that it easily pays for the little amount that I want to borrow. So that's how I see it's going to work. I think a lot of people are in that boat, and it's taken a long time to get to the situation where you can borrow against your crypto and rather than sell it. Prior to now, if you wanted to, have some lifestyle tokens and go on that vacation and get some cool stuff, you needed to sell your crypto. And that's, not really the case anymore. There's enough people out there lending on crypto. And so I think supply is going to get very, very, very scarce here very, very soon. There's only 21 million ever made. We're at 19 and a half, I think, something like that. And now we've got the IBITs and the other ETFs and stuff like that. It's going to get snapped up so fast. And so this is the accumulation period. I'm not selling. Most of the people that I know are not selling anytime soon. And so we'll see how that plays out. All right, Juan, thank you very much, guys. If you're at home, like, subscribe. Let me know what your strategy is in the comments below. Are you buying and holding? Are you selling? You're going to try and sell at the top, buy at the lows? You tell me. I'd love to hear it. And we'll see you guys soon. Take care.